Welcome to another edition of 1 in 15. As ever, I'm going to get my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nigel Pimlott. I live in Newark, a small village just outside Newark in Nottinghamshire. I'm married to Sue, currently looking after two little girls. I support Manchester City, which is essential in life, really. My background's in youth work and bits of academia. I've worked for the Methodist Church for the last 5 years now, helping with learning development. And I'm also currently covering someone one day a week on looking at transformational leadership and how we might better equip leaders to bring about change and respond to our current situations, really. So I think that's
sounds like you've got your work cut out, to say the least. And I know enough about you, as with a lot of my guests, to know that that hasn't even begun to summary what you also dabble in. As you know, the purpose of this 1 in 15 is to talk about one big thing dominating people's minds. What is that for you at the moment?
I think it, in a sentence, it's or a phrase, it's questions, really. I did about 10 years ago, I did a course in coaching for the Institute of Leadership and Management. And coaching was all about questions, and ever since then I've just been captivated by questions. Sure. Particularly big, powerful questions which tap us into something bigger. And I think the more I've pondered this, particularly in our current challenging times, the more I found that important. When we've been struggling for answers, perhaps, I found great comfort in the questions. Sure. And helping others to unpack what's going on in their particular lives at any one moment, really. So yeah, big powerful questions is my one big thing. Okay, well that sounds like really interesting. I'm reminded of there's a cartoon, a Canadian cartoonist called David Hayward who goes under the title Naked Pastor. You might have come across him. Yeah. And he did a series a while back on kind of exclamation marks versus questions, and I really like that idea of living in the ambiguity of a question, letting it kind of trigger your thoughts, but not necessarily having to arrive at a full stop or an exclamation mark. So tell me more about where you're coming from with that idea of big questions. I think as I've looked back on my own life, I recall it's been certain people at certain times asking the right questions, and sure. They've been really formational and also given me impetus and direction. I'm a person of faith too, Christian faith. I'm fascinated by Jesus, allegedly one of the great teachers of all time. And he seemed to spend all his time asking questions. And he even asked questions when he was asked a question. Some people say he asked 150 or so questions. Some people say it was more than 300 questions in the Gospels we have. And so that fascinates me. I think one of my stories going back many years is the story of a rabbi, and the rabbi's disciples sort of said, Rabbi, why do you always answer a question with a question? And the rabbi came back and said, so what's wrong with the question? And I kind of love that narrative of responding to big questions with other questions to take us forward. I love to help people thrive and flourish. I think that's one of my things. And rightly or wrongly, I meet way too many people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s have never really got to that place of fulfillment in life, really. And I think those big questions can really help some people find that kind of place, so they do thrive and flourish. And aren't stuck in a dead-end job or a dead-end relationship. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I just meet too many people who've never really asked those questions. So sure. That's one of the things I think is fascinating me. So
that like obviously, coach to coach, like we share that space, and I'm sure like a lot of coaches we're like really energized by that concept of question. And it's so important what you're saying, because it's not just the idea of a question. Full stop. It's the right question, isn't it? And so often I have conversation with clients where they're asking questions, but as a coach, you kind of go, you're almost there, but it's not quite the right question you're asking. That's maybe part of our job, is to go, what about this? Or what would happen if that happened? And that's really interesting. So if that's an angle you're thinking of, what are maybe some of the questions that people are asking of themselves now, and what might be the slight tweak to make it a better question?
Yeah, I think one of the things people are looking for, particularly in my world around church, is particularly institutional church, is someone to give them permission to do something, to do something different. And I have no power in my job, no power at all, really. But for some reason, people seem to think I give them permission, and I don't. I just, they find their own permission by answering, some of those big questions. So one of my faves at the moment is, if you knew you couldn't possibly fail and God was going to guarantee you success, what call might you make in this moment, or what would you do? And people find questions like that quite liberating, I think, and it takes them to a different place. I also like the one, rather than saying what happened or something like that, if you say something like "tell me about," that again, it opens up a narrative and a conversation, which I think is really powerful, and it puts the sense of responsibility and power perhaps in their hands to tell you what they want to tell you.
Yeah, sure.
I think, that's kind of interesting from my point of view.
I love that. I remember like one of the most powerful coaching experiences I've received as a client was somebody, a coach who just kept asking the same question. Like I think it was something like, what else might have been going on? And and I would give an answer, and it was like literally stripping back the layers each time, and kind of I started in a place of some distress, and by the end of it, my distress wasn't wholly dispelled, but I could genuinely see it from other perspectives. I could see the nuances that I'd missed, and that was really powerful. Just by one question repeated, it is amazingly freeing.
Yeah, sometimes I sometimes get anxious because I'm sometimes in people's face when I'm coaching, because I do that. I'll ask the same question 3 or 4 times. I think sometimes that the first response is not an answer. The second response is sometimes what they think I want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's only when we get to that third or fourth that we begin to get some real honesty is the wrong word, but we kind of get to that depth, really.
Sure.
And I think it happens particularly when I've noticed this a lot. I might say, "Hey, Andy, how are you feeling about how things are going?" And people will then spend hours telling me what they're thinking and what they're doing or going to do. And I'll keep going and say, "That's great, Andy, but what are you feeling?" And depending on whether they're left or right brained, some of that takes a lot of unpacking. And it's only for some people, when they can get to that feelings and emotional connectivity, do they actually understand what might be going on in that moment. And I think things like that for me are really interesting. And I'm taking back to I was fortunate. I was a guy called Phil Vogel, who I think he must be in his 80s now. He used to input into Cliff Richard and church leader I was fond of, Gerald Coates, and he bizarrely agreed to spend some time with me, which was kind of a strange thing, really. And he was one of these people who, in a lovely way, spiritually undressed you. And he asked one question, and you were on the floor for weeks, but it was the right question. And I always remember I was struggling with a family relationship, which I was accommodating and pandering to. And he said, "Do you see that relationship as poisonous or ice cream?"
Right.
And it was kind of, I went, "Oh, that's cruel. That's such a cruel question." But it literally took me weeks to unpack that. And I said, "I see it as ice cream, but it's actually poisonous."
Yeah.
It was only when I understood that could I begin to respond to it. It's not always that simple or that binary kind of choice, but it was just one of those moments which has stuck with me now for 30 odd years as a really powerful question. Is our practice, our habit, our relationships, what we do with our time, our money, is it poison or is it ice cream? I know it's not as simple as that, but it just really helped me at that time make some massive progress, really. So.
And those kind of questions are really important, again, from that fairly common experience of coaching, of talking to a client or doing some self-reflection where you recognize that something that was safe, resourcing, all those positive things has just curdled over time, isn't serving the purpose. So many of us are locked into stories about ourselves that we generated or others generated for us that were freeing, but have become prison as life's progressed. And I guess that, again, it's that asking of just trying to tweak the question or push the question or get us to, as individuals or with a client, to kind of unpack what the many layers of the possible answers to that question might be. In that respect, again, you know, obviously, arguably for most of us in the last kind of 9 to 12 months, it's been a time of questions more than before. Who am I? How can I work if I'm on furlough? If I'm out of a job? You know, if my industry is falling apart? How can we live together as a family in a home when everyone's working and schooling? You know, all these multitude of questions, and obviously we can see how stressful that is, because none of them have got an instant answer. Some of them have got answers that might work in the short term, but again, don't work going forward. What has been your experience of kind of wrestling with those questions as an individual, or kind of as someone standing with other people? How do you get people from a place of just panic, being overwhelmed by all those questions, to a place where they can start exploring them a bit more?
Yeah, probably. I've done quite a lot of reflection, study, and you know, and spending some time and training around this. I think I'm pretty convinced that some of the models that people are offering are good ones. So generally, it's, you know, the language differs depending on your point of view, but it's, you know, try and get some stability in the moment. Try and rekindle what it is or who you are as a human being, and then try and move forward. And I think sometimes people try and do that the wrong way around. You know, in the crisis, you know, we just have to get some stability, and I know that's not possible when there's lots of variables, but you know, some stability perhaps around who we are. You know, I know it's a cliche now, but we are human beings, not doings first. It is about who we are, not what we do primary. I'm very convinced, again, my faith perspective, you know, I'm convinced God has a purpose for us. I don't think that's kind of a narrow tightrope or a small box, but it's a general purpose that we were created for. So if we can drill into that purpose, I think that brings a sense of stability, irrespective of what's going on with us. And my experience was slightly different, really, I suppose, because perhaps some people listening might know, but about this time 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And had surgery to remove that, and so far so good. And apart from, you know, you inevitably ask those big existential questions about, oh, am I going to make this, and your mortality. But particularly during the convalescence, I really began to unpack what my purpose was a bit more, really. And I think, you know, I determined what I was going to say yes to, and equally what I was going to say no to. And I started to take more risks in that, really. So I started to take, you know, I started to think, maybe, what if? Let's not lose this chance. And I'm not being naive, because I know some people are really struggling in the moment. But I think if we can focus on that purpose and try and operate within the scheme of that purpose, rather than just kind of almost be blown around by the wind. And again, I don't say that flippantly. I know it's very difficult when we need to pay the rent or the mortgage or the bills, but I've just got this core conviction that if we can hone in around our purpose, and that can be anything. It don't matter to me whether you're a CEO or a cleaner or a nurse or a gardener or you know, looking after children. You know, whatever that purpose is, just stick with it. I think would be where I would be at in terms of this current moment, if we can. So
that's really helpful.
Just before I finish that, just my PS is to that. I recognise we all have to do stuff we don't want to do, but in terms of a direction of travel, it would be that purpose. Asking the questions which get you there, really, is my thing. So
I like that. I mean, we're pretty much bang out of time, but it's that kind of thing of, you know, I wrestled with that purpose thing, you know, coming from a Christian perspective as well, and kind of over time rejecting some of the ways that purpose was being articulated or understood. And so for me, I find, you know, you said it yourself, I find that kind of image of a trajectory quite helpful. It's like, it's less specific, but you know if you're going in the right direction or not. And it's that thing of, absolutely. It's been an insane time, and you know, over this series of interviews, have always been really cautious to not end up saying to people, you know, all you need to do is this, or just do that, or, you know, take it as an opportunity. But at the same time to say, like, you know, hold what opportunities you can, you know, take them as you are able. And it might be a tiny thing. It might be that you've got some resources which mean it to be quite a big thing, but nonetheless, just take those 2 tiny steps. Don't break yourself in it, you know, be gentle. But maybe that's some of the questions that we can be asking ourselves as we go forward, as we hopefully come out of the pandemic into whatever the future is going to look and feel like, is to start saying, well, you know, who am I in this space? What is my potential? And what is the next step I can take? Doesn't matter how big or seismic it is, or even if it's in the right direction or not, but what is that next step that I can take?
Yeah. And I think there's a sense, if you're the person asking the questions, having that sense of empathy is really important. You know, some people we have to be very gentle with, and others as we build a relationship. There's someone I've been working with, to be honest, it's been really slow and tortuous. And a couple of weeks ago, I really said, I've had enough of this. I'm going to ask some more bold questions, because empathetically, I felt we could cope with that. And it was a game changer. The time after that we met, this person came back with plans, with commitments and stuff we'd not had. So that understanding where that person's at and that empathy is really important in asking the right questions, I think. If you get, you know, I wouldn't want to be bland and say, you know, just ask a massive question on first meet, because that might not be an appropriate response, particularly at this time of people are, you know, coping with loss and all those traumas around finances and relationships and stuff. So thank you.
No, that's brilliant, Nigel. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for your time today. As with all my guests, you left me with loads to think about. I'm probably going to go off and do some personal reflection after this recording, ask myself some, hopefully, the right questions at the right depth, and see if I get somebody else to accompany with that. Bless you, Nigel Pimlott. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.